everyone, welcome to the program. This is Sunday Politics live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimale right here in our Abuja studio. Welcome to the program, everyone. Let's tell you quickly that President Bola Tinubu will depart Nigeria for a state visit to the Republic of Turkey. The special advisor to the president on the information and strategy, Mr. Bayo Nanuga, revealed in a statement earlier today that the president will undertake that state visit to Turkey, and the visit is aimed at strengthening the existing cordial relations between the two countries and exploring further areas of cooperation in security, education, social development, innovation, and aviation. It also supposed to be a reciprocal visit of the president of Turkey, Mr. Erdogan, who visited Nigeria on the 19th and 20th of October 2021. Before we begin tonight's conversation, let me take a quick reflection for a moment on perhaps one of your biggest stories, politically speaking, and in terms of diplomacy and international politics last year. It was the Trump-Tinubu phenomenon and the gun-blazing story. And as we begin the new year, it's important to take a stock as a people. Now, Nigeria and the United States have held the third plenary session of the Joint Working Group on Security and Religious Freedom at the Office of the National Security Advisor, which is co-chaired by NSA Yakubu Dogara and U.S. Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, Alison Hooker. The meeting underscored a partnership that has moved beyond diplomatic tension into measurable action that we've seen, from intelligence sharing and coordinated operations to firm U.S. commitments on the delivery of long-delayed military hardware. Let me allow you to listen to the outcome of some of those things they said at the meeting which held just late last week. Take a listen.
We also recognize that our partnership with the United States extends well beyond security cooperation. It encompasses democratic resilience, respect for the rule of law, regional stability in West Africa, and a shared determination to prevent extremists and malign actors from exploiting governance gaps or social fractures.
We call for the government to work with local authorities to find and secure the release of the innocent victims, and to work with NGOs to meet the victims' families' needs in the meantime. Advancing religious freedom and security will help the United States and Nigeria to enhance the reciprocal benefits.
Well, as the federal government put it, the engagement reflects a mature strategic relationship grounded in trust, candor, and shared responsibility, signaling that what was once a threatened situation to become a hostile standoff is steadily evolving into structured, outcome-driven cooperation with direct implication for Nigeria's security and stability. In late 2025, Nigeria's U.S. relations found itself on a precarious trajectory. U.S. President Donald Trump publicly warned that America might engage Nigeria guns a-blazing if the federal government did not arrest a surge of violence against Christian communities, a charge Nigeria's authorities consistently rejected as an oversimplification of a complex multi-religious security crisis, where Trump's declaration coincided with the U.S. State Department's designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern, a move that amplified diplomatic strain and spurred Abuja to hire lobbyists to clarify Nigeria's stance and security challenges. Yet, what began as a sharp criticism opened a pathway for engagement, and that was under pressure and the need to avoid any form of direct humiliation of the Nigerian leadership and its people. Nigeria's National Security Advisor, Malam Nuhu, led high-level delegations to Washington and hosted senior U.S. officials in Abuja, forging a framework for bilateral security through the launch of a U.S.-Nigeria Joint Working Group on Security. The partnership has now pivoted toward tangible outcomes, intensified intelligence sharing, close coordination between U.S. AFRICOM and Nigeria's military, and joint efforts that culminated in precision airstrike on ISIS-linked militant enclave in Sokoto State on Christmas Day 2025. Washington has also committed to delivering Nigeria's long-pending military equipment purchases, including drones, helicopters, and support systems, marking a shift from threat to support in practice. For the Tinubu administration, what might have been a damaging foreign policy episode has instead become a case study in diplomacy under pressure. Ribadu's strategic engagement recalibrated a potentially confrontational relationship into one of operational partnership. Would you call that a masterstroke? If he saved Nigeria from embarrassment, you saw what happened in Venezuela. If he saved Nigeria from being killed, or take Nigerians for granted or being exploited. One that has helped secure U.S. backing in Nigeria's fight against violent extremism and banditry is what we have seen in the past days. Why preserving sovereignty and decision-making control over domestic operations. The key lesson emerging is that crisis now can catalyze cooperation when managed with clarity of purpose and mutual respect. Whether this translates into permanent gains, sustained equipment delivery, robust intelligence fusion, and deeper institutional alignment depends on how the federal government is learning from this and consolidating this cooperation into long-term security architecture that delivers meaningful peace for ordinary Nigerians. Trump breathing down on Nigeria's neck and the Nigerian government being uncomfortable is a big lesson diplomatically to learn from. So I said, from threat to trust, where the nearest future will determine whether that title sufficiently captures the episode that is unfolding. Yesterday, some former members of Nigeria's federal and state legislatures, it's called the Forum of Ex-Legislatures. They met, and after their meeting, they have renewed calls for more understanding in Nigeria's political arrangement and the rotation of presidency between the North and the South to formally incorporate it into the Constitution of Nigeria. They have argued that such a move would deepen trust, ease political tension, and reinforce national cohesion. The call was among key resolutions adopted at that 2026 National Summit of National Forum of Former Legislators held in Abuja under the theme National Unity and Nation Building Beyond 2031. Let me allow you to listen to some of the leaders speaking here.
The principles of a rotational presidency between the North and the South stands as one of the clearest expressions of principled compromise in the service of our national interest. It was not born of weakness, but of the wisdom of earlier generations of political leaders who understood that in a diverse nation such as ours, inclusion is the foundation of stability. This arrangement was deliberately designed to manage our differences, ease tensions, prevent needless conflict, and keep Nigeria steadily moving forward.
You're talking of us, the Southerners, and you are talking of us, giving the baton to the Northerners. How are we going to accept that? Are we still going to continue in 2 terms, that when the time comes, we start fighting each other? The answer is capital no. I want to suggest, it's my own personal suggestion, that we should try as much as possible to make it 5-year term. So that when you finish your own zone, you know that this thing is automatically going back to the North or to the South. So that it will make it clear that we can work together as one nation.
I want to say that this summit should not rise without coming up with that recommendation that we needed rotation in our constitution to stabilize our polity.
All right, you saw former Speaker Femba Jabiamila, Madam Patricia Ete, and the former Senate President Pius Ayim. Well, Tonight, we turn to the state of the nation through the eyes of a former presiding officer of the National Assembly. Nigeria grapples with economic pressures, debates over a new tax regime, the proposed amendments to the Electoral Act, and early political maneuverings that we have seen ahead of 2027. Questions are also emerging within the ruling party over unity and succession conversation. Of course, gleaning from what happened yesterday and the conversation about rotational presidency and the thoughts of former lawmakers. Our guest tonight is the former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Yakubu Dogara. It's live for us here in our Abuja studio. It's a pleasure having you join us, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Sean, for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
It does look like that, political analysts will say, that looks like an orchestrated Tinubu agenda that you and your colleagues had yesterday about consolidated, because it looks like 2013 and beyond, that's what you're talking about. And it's assumed that 2027 is sealed in that conversation to be a return to the South. Is that what this is about?
Well, let me first of all thank you for having me. And to say that the entire idea behind the establishment of the Forum of former members of the legislature is to bring us together and then see how we can harness the training we have had in Parliament. A lot of people forget that when we're members, some go to even the Ivory Leagues for courses in Harvard, in Cambridge, in Oxford, so many other institutions. And once you leave the National Assembly, it's like the whole asset that this nation has helped in depositing in you goes to rot. And so we thought it was appropriate for us to begin to assemble ourselves, knowing very well that the future will seek of advancement, of development, of progress is attainable, but only if we take the responsibility and the risks to go for it, deliberately go for it. That is the motivation behind the establishment of this forum. And as I understand, this forum is meant to cater for all former legislatures. It will interest you to know that senators were there, members of the House of Representatives were there, state assembly members, former, and even councillors. From the delegation, I know that at least there was one person from the 774 local government of Nigeria. Now, we're talking about whether it was orchestrated or not. I know because the convener, who is Right Honorable Femi Bajabiamila, who happens to be the Chief of Staff to the President, who is the convener of this forum, and it will appear to so many that it's already compromised. But you see, in the National Assembly, we have a way of doing things. You understand? I was a member of the House of Representatives for 4 solid terms. And then throughout my stay, there was never a situation where we arrived at a decision carrying along all 360 members. There's always a room for dissent. So as far as I'm concerned, it's normal. That was the opinion of overwhelming majority of those who gathered. Perhaps there were others who didn't agree. And as far as I'm concerned, there's no shrinking the space for them to participate. And in that case, say, no, we don't agree with rotational presidency. We don't even agree that our forum should endorse President Tinubu for so reasons. But in the National Assembly, in parliaments where we operate, everybody knows that decisions always go to the majority. But you don't shut down the minority. They will always have their say. But the overriding purpose for establishing the forum is first to cater and, like I've said, harness all those skills that members acquired while serving the nation, serving the people, and then embedding themselves in the study of legislative process. And we feel that they have a responsibility, especially now the democratic rights all over the world are under threat, for us to come together, unite behind the ideals and some of the reasons that propel us into politics, and then speak with one voice. And then yesterday, we arrived at those two conclusions. The issue of rotational presidency, like you well captured. If it is something that is desired in order to expand on national cohesion, to reduce the internal wranglings whenever, it's an electioneering period, why are we scared? Let's put it in the Constitution for the time being. You see, we cannot achieve the unity we desire in this country in the absence of justice and fairness. And justice to the northerner should be justice to the southerner. And as Martin Luther King Jr. said, justice is indivisible. And once we arrived at that conclusion, it is very easy for us to say, okay, let's codify this. Let's go ahead and codify this so that there's no room for mistrust anymore. We all know that once the North is done, power shifts to the South. Perhaps in the process of nation building, we can get to a point where it's no longer necessary, and then we can eliminate it from the Constitution. Yeah. But right now, I believe there's a case to be made. And I want to thank overwhelming majority of the members who attended the forum yesterday for deciding that that should be the case.
It's interesting. Okay, so you wanted to say the second point.
And I wanted to make this point. In the case of President Tinubu, you are talking about whether 2027 is already taken for granted. I believe that should be the case, not only because of the principles of rotational presidency, but based on leadership, the reforms. If you had listened to my statement yesterday, the goodwill message I delivered, I talked about a community in the far-flung regions of the Northeast, in Mambila Plateau, where the president is building a road from Gembu to Mbanga, Yang, and Liop that will link Nigeria to the Cameroonian border. This was a road that was promised to these communities before the 1961 plebiscite, and it was never done. And it is only during this tenure of Bola Ahmed Tinubu that the contract is being awarded. The entire community gathered. We went there, and then I was received at the borders of the Cameroonian borders. So the entire community gathered. The paramount ruler of that community addressed me and said, well, in case you run into the president, please thank him and tell him that this was what we were promised before voting to join Nigeria, because those were the trust territories then. And then nothing was done, but he has done it. And he said, I assure you that as far as we are concerned, our 2027 election is already decided. And the joy I saw in the eyes of these people is something that a zillion words cannot describe. It's indescribable. This was a region that was dominated by treacherous terrain. It took you 6 hours from Gembuch, the headquarters of Sardauna local government, to the area we went to at the Cameroonian border. It's just 1 hour, 30 minutes. By the time the road is done, it's 45 minutes journey. So what brought all this thing about is leadership. If we look at the case of security, I made the point yesterday. I come from the northeast region of this country. I don't know whether you missed it. During the Christmas period, I traveled to Bauchi, of course, to receive the president when he came on a condolence call, and then made my way back to Abuja on the road. From Jos to Abuja, even with the security, the police, the army that were clearing the road for us, it took us almost 9 hours to get into Abuja. I have never seen this historic kind of traffic to the northeast. You know, Jos is the gateway to the northeast. And then you will ask yourself, why were people commuting to the northeast? For the very first time in about 15 years, I haven't seen that. It means that people are beginning to have faith in whatever the government is doing in terms of improvement of security. Hitherto, people were running from the northeast into the hinterland. But now you could see that during the holidays, people were moving back. So I said, even on the merits, we're not talking about rotational, we're not talking about, oh, it should be south. On the merits, I think a case can be made for President Tinubu to continue.
So was that a vote and a motion moved yesterday that was agreed upon?
Yes.
It was part of the agreement yesterday.
Yes.
But there are those who will say there are fundamental challenges confronting this nation. And there are those who argue that it should be left to the Nigerian people to decide, the voters, to decide whether the fate of President Bola Tinubu. Yes, members of your party can agree to give him the ticket, but yet the mandate of 2027 should be handed into the hands of Nigerians, not to you and your colleagues in that room, to decide whether or not President Bola Tinubu should have a smooth ride. The judgment of whether he has performed well based on the promises made will be in the hands of the voters who will judge at the polls.
Well, Shaun, I agree with you. I'm on all fours with you on this matter. Assuming we are not part of the voters, I believe majority of the people who gathered yesterday form critical component of the Nigerian voter. And you know, some of us were elected from different constituencies, either as councillors, state assembly members, members of the House of Representatives, senators. All of us were elected by the people. And no matter how bad a former member is, he will control between 15 to 20% of the people from his constituency will listen to him. So these are voices that you cannot discountenance. You cannot. And we have not stopped anybody in Nigeria. It's a free world. It's democracy we're running. To come and say, oh no, we can't do this, we can't hand over to, or we cannot support Tinubu to complete his second term or for the second term in office for this reason. We have said our own and we have given our reasons. Now we want to listen to others. Perhaps they may even convince us to change our minds. But right now we need to see what is it that they have. What is it that they are developing? What is that big idea? What is that vision that differs from what President Tinubu is pursuing that may take us out of doldrums? And when that case is made, then we can consider.
Because the president,
in the president, I haven't seen anything on the ground.
The president's made fundamental promises that a lot of people anchor on three major points. That is going to drastically improve the economy of this country. It's going to secure Nigeria, and he also promised reforms in the system. And there are those who will be asking the question tonight, for those of you who believe in the Tinubu ideology and his handling of the nation, we're saying, as he delivered on these promises, are the lives of Nigerians better in 2023 before May 2023 when President took oath of office? And now, are they more secure? Are those reforms that have been promised, are they drastically changing their lives or making it worse or putting more burden on them? These are critical questions. And in all judgment, and today is Sunday, there are a lot of people who will say, if we speak truth to power, are those deliveries captured in the performance of this president and its government?
Well, let me say this. I don't know from which perspective you are judging. Honestly speaking, some of the issues were even understated or underrated. When we talk about the challenges relating to security, it has taken us how many years to get to the point where President Tinubu took over? You understand? And then there's nobody who has that magical wand that will just come and just wave it and everything will disappear. It is a challenge, but I can tell you that from the time this president took over to the time we were speaking now, in those days, if they asked you to go to Kaduna, just not too far from here, would you? You remember what even happened to the train from Abuja to Kaduna? You wouldn't. And like I said, in those days, if they tell you travel to Southern Borno, travel to Borno, not even only Southern Borno, travel to Adama and all those regions in the northeast for Christmas or for any holiday, you wouldn't want to embark on that journey. Honestly speaking, we have seen leadership in that area. We have truly seen leadership. And in terms of the economic collapse of this nation, I don't know whether we sincerely appreciate where we were coming from. I like the point. I like the fact that the president does not share blame. You understand? He believes that apportioning blame is not the part effective leaders take. But if we were to really articulate where Nigeria was at the time he took over to what has been achieved so far, you will give him below 60%. although argument can be made, this philonomics, are people feeling it? I agree. That argument can be made. And in terms of reforms, reforms are absolutely necessary. And when he took over, maybe realizing how perilous the state of our economy was, it was just waiting to implode. We talked recently, last year, I addressed a gathering, and I was telling them about the 22.7 trillion that was printed by means of ways and means. That is how it is called. Just printing money. And then you can't really attribute value as such to that quantum of money that was printed and injected into the economy. That was the beginning of the problem. And so things that have suffered years of decay, to say that you totally reverse them within 2 years, honestly, it's not possible. But we have seen that there's light at the end of the tunnel if these reforms are allowed to endure. I'm a farmer. If my cow, gets pregnant, I expect that it should deliver within 9 months, because that's the gestation period. And if they call me to say that the cow has delivered within 3-4 months, I know that I have a crisis. So a lot of us know for sure that some of the reforms will actually take time before they begin to yield returns. And we're beginning to see that a lot of areas of leakages have been covered. Look at where we're hemorrhaging money through dual exchange rates. I don't know whether you've been able to truly estimate how much we lost in the process, where people became multi-billionaires overnight for offering no services, for selling no goods, for practically doing no works, just because they had leverage and access where they could get forex allocation and sell every week. But this president came, and then all these things have been eliminated.
Just a moment.
I think we are on the right track, even if people are not feeling it.
But that's magical anyways, because how do you convince people that they are on the right track when they cannot see it or when they cannot feel it? But before we go on a break, I'd like you to expatiate on the principle of the rotational presidency, and as agreed, it's not constitutional, it's not written in any of our laws, it's just a PDP idea from 1999 that some members of the PDP thought it was important for balance sake, and considering what we have experienced in the past 3 republics, they thought that something has to give. And the emergence of Olusegun Obasanjo is an understanding that some people have been injured in our political arrangement, and then we need to understand with them. But that coming into the front burner, and people were saying, let us codify it and make it as part of our laws in the ground norm, it means something. And that those will be asking a critical question. Are you sacrificing competency over political arrangement or political convenience in the name of rotational presidency?
Well, I think I understand this question and I understand the concern. The concern will always be that if you go for rotational presidency, then this thing you're compromising maybe merit and competence. But it's not true, because there's hardly any area of human endeavor in which you can find someone from the north that is competent or from the south that is competent. So I think we can jettison that argument. What bothers some of us is the fact that we have to work towards uniting our people to be able to build. This issue of nation building, with that unity, we have to forge an identity for ourselves as Nigerians, bring everybody, run an inclusive government. So the question is that if leadership is not a zero-sum game, then it shouldn't be that, maybe because the population advantage we have in the north, we should always carry everything. No. Like I said, what is justice for the northerner should be justice for the southerner. Now, the difficult conversation we should have around this is, how do we structure this? Do we just leave it as a form of understanding, like you have rightly posited, that was the position of the PDP when, against all odds, they brought President Obasanjo into power, because they believed that some people have been hurt and they needed to take the presidency to the southwest to be able to assuage some feelings. because of the victory, obviously, that Abiola had, which was annulled. So if the question is that what is fair to the North should be fair to the South, what is justice, fairness to the North, fairness to the South, justice to the North, justice to the South. So how now do we actualize this in the time being? And like I've pointed out, our problem is forging national identity. And by the time we collapse everything into Nigeria, you don't see yourself as a Yoruba person in Nigeria. I don't see myself as a Northerner in Nigeria. We all see ourselves as Nigerians. Then it will be very easy for us to say, okay, remove this thing. Constitutions are amended. We've done alterations to the Constitution. We can take it out. But in the time being, I support the idea that this position should be codified.
All right. Give me a moment, Honorable Speaker. I know for someone with your experience, looking at how you emerge as a speaker against the run of play in the Bukola Saraki scenario and the Yakubu Dogara, and I can remember how that name echoed, and I was wondering, who is Yakubu Dogara on the floor on that day? That those who say against the run of play that happened. And against the political identity that we have always framed in this country, a Christian northerner like you, I'm also a Yoruba northerner, there are a lot of conspiracy in our politics that needs to be demystified. But when we come back from the break, there are a lot of issues I'd like you to pick on, I'd like to take you up on when we return. That's going to be after this break, everyone. That is it. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Honorable former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Yakubu Dogara, has been speaking with us on the outcome of the conversation at the ex-lawmaker forum, which was held yesterday. Thanks so much, Honorable Speaker, for your time tonight. Let me take you up quickly on the principle of this rotational presidency and how these can help our politics in Nigeria. In 2027, for example, there are those in some part of the country, and if the names of the likes of Atiku Abubakar comes up, and there's the argument that, well, it wasn't a PDP or ADC idea, that anyone from the north, and I saw the battle led by the likes of El Rufai in the APC in 2002, prior to the emergence of President Bola Tinubu as the candidate of the APC. But those who say it was only fair for a southerner to emerge after Muhammadu Buhari. But those in the PDP said, well, it is an APC idea. Buhari was an APC president, according to them. And that Atiku is fit and proper, for example, as a candidate who is a northern Muslim emerging as the candidate. And there are those who are saying that there's nothing wrong with an Atiku also running in 2027. Should an Atiku win that election in 2027, does this justify or erase the calibration politically in the equation that we're talking about?
Yeah, that will appear to be the case, because it's only logical to arrive at that conclusion that that will upend the argument that we're making, that once power goes to the South, if we're running 2 terms of 4 years, and Northern has spent 8 years in power, then South should complete their own 8 years before power moves back to the North. So it appears that if there are to be that probability, then that upends the argument that we're trying to make. And that was why I believe there was this push at the forum to actually begin the very difficult conversation about codifying that position for the time being, until such a time where we feel that we have arrived at the juncture in our efforts to build a nation where that doesn't matter anymore. But as it is, like I told you, I'm sold out for that because of justice and fairness. That will bring the much needed unity that has eluded us. And you know, throughout history and civilization, no nation or civilization that was not united has ever built a civilization. If you look at the Roman Empire, it wasn't conquered by an invading army. It was lack of unity that led to the collapse of the Roman Empire. It collapsed from inside. There was no invading force. But when Rome was united, they conquered virtually all the known world. It was part of Roman Empire. And then that is also true with Nigeria. If we're able to get to a point where we can rally overwhelming majority of our people to a national cause, Nigeria will be great. Because what makes a nation great is not mineral resources, it's not even wealth. It's the willingness of the citizens to work together.
So again, Speaker Dogara, there are those who argue that if you look at what happened to late President Yakubu, who is unable to complete his term, and the principle of the emergency that came with President Goodluck Jonathan coming and spending 5 years, and there are those who will say, yeah, the North was just changed by the cause of nature, whatever the accident that happened when the late president died in office. And there are those who say, are you going to be able to prevail on all political parties to say you must have your candidate come from the southern region of the country? And there is the position of the Constitution which you are also going to be breaching by saying some people from a certain part of the country cannot run against their constitutional right of franchise.
Well, I think that would be undemocratic. Although the culture of democracy relates to conflict, consensus, and then you have progress. So for me, if we agree that this principle should be codified, it should be very simple. To every general rule, as we say in law, there's an exception, and some exceptions are actually forced on the situation. In the case of death, it's an act of God. There's nothing anybody can do about it. And by constitutional design, whoever is the vice president then steps in to become the president. So in the process of working out this arrangement and codification, because I'm a lawmaker, when we're making laws, we put provisos in the law. So we anticipate a situation where we will never have a perfect situation, a smooth run. Intervening factors such as this may come up, and then by constitutional design, we will be able to arrive as a consensus as to what to do in case that happens. Now, relating to your second argument that, for instance, if we insist that power should remain in the South, does it mean that endorsement of President Tinubu now forecloses the door to those competent aspirants from the South to vie? I believe that it will be undemocratic. If there's anybody from the South who thinks he has his credentials, who may defeat him in the primaries or any way possible, it is within his democratic and constitutional right, once it is there in the South, to come out and vie for it. But if there's none, then you can't hold anybody responsible for blocking someone.
In the complication of our political calculation in this country, and there are those who say Trump breathing down on our necks and saying the victimization of the Christian communities in this country, and the argument to the backdrop of the choice of President Bola Tinubu of a Muslim running mate. And going into 2027, there are those who are saying that already the conversation has started in the APC as to how to balance things out to not annoy the Trump presidency in America, and to seem to give some kind of balance to the equation that could have also angered a lot of people who think there is no balance in the ticket of Bola Tinubu. And your name has come up, that you could be the running mate to President Bola Tinubu in 2027. How does that come to you?
Well, I think I would have sincerely pleaded with you to leave me out of this. But perhaps let me say something. I think whatever we're doing shouldn't be because we're afraid of anybody breathing down our necks. It should be because it is the right thing to be done. We're talking about running an inclusive government. We're talking about bringing everybody in this country together so that we'll be able to build a nation. that works for all of us. So if that is the case, if we're having a discussion about rotational presidency, there's nothing stopping us from having that discussion as well. Because you see, the truth is that when you're not talking about just northern Christians, you're talking about the Christian faith as a whole. So if you have a Muslim, whether he comes from the north or from the south, let it be that he's representing the Muslim community. And if you have a Christian, wherever he comes from, he covers for the Christian faith. So that gives you the religious balance that we're talking about. But honestly, if we're going to do anything along those lines, it shouldn't be that we are scared. But because as men of it, we believe that God requires of us to do justice. And justice demands that we should balance things. I think that should be our concern.
So APC should consider a Christian running mate in 2027?
It's a discussion. And I'm aware that that discussion is taking place now. So at the end of the day, whatever the president decides, ultimately, nobody who is a serving president has ever lost primaries. So we assume that the president definitely will get the ticket of the party. Ultimately, whatever decisions that he takes, I believe that it is up to him. But if we have overwhelming majority of our people making a case that these things should be balanced, as a Democrat, I sincerely believe that he will listen to it. And particularly for us, Northerners like me and you, I've always insisted that anybody who divides the North along religious lines has actually conquered the North. Come from a family, one of my uncles was even a sheikh. He died in Saudi Arabia. How do you expect me to discriminate against him just because he's a Muslim? And so many communities, so many families, in the North, in my own part of the North, I like that. So I want to see a situation just like as you raise one issue, my journey to becoming a speaker. I want to see that episode being replayed consistently so that when anything concerns a Muslim, I don't look at him as a Muslim. I should be able to fight for him that this is a collective progress as Northerners and as Nigerians. And when Christians on the other side see Muslim brothers defending the rights and privileges of the Christians as if it was their own, that will definitely bring us together. And then we'll acquire the unity that we need in order to rebuild the North that is currently being destroyed.
Politically speaking, there are those who think if the APC dares to change the arithmetic, it might hurt them politically. How do you balance things out?
Well, I don't think that argument is for me to make here. But judging from what transpired in 2023, for instance, if you are able to put the statistic on the table, you'll be able to come to that conclusion yourself. So any smart politician should be able to detect that. So at the end of the day, it boils down to all of us, like I said, Christians, Muslims working together. And I believe that there are so many people on the other side who sincerely believe that that should be the case. So it's for us to work together, it's for us to convince people, to talk to people, and then if that is the consensus of the majority, it can easily be done. And I think it's achievable.
Yeah, quickly, before we go on another break. Yes. If the lot falls on you, is Yakubu Dogara ready to be a vice president?
Well, honestly speaking, I don't know why I'm being asked these questions, but let me say something.
Your name has been...
Let me say something. I don't think I'm ever prepared for anything. Honestly, what I'm prepared for is that I know that everything I am is by the grace of God. I will look at myself as totally unprepared, although I have some rich pedigree. Having served as the Speaker of the House of Representatives, having been number 4 person in this country of about 200 million, there are certain things I know that a lot of people don't know. I can assure you that. But all I know is that I'm not perfect. But the only consolation is that the Tasks of nation building, building civilizations from history that I've read, emergence of empires, how they collapse, the responsibility for building those civilizations was never placed on the shoulders of perfect men.
All right. We're due for a break. But quickly, do you think that the voices of Christians are drowned in northern Nigeria?
Well, I think in some part of northern Nigeria, yes. But there are some parts of northern Nigeria where, as a matter of fact, okay, for instance, if you come in from Plateau State, if you come from Benue State, to some extent Taraba, Nasarawa State and all those, you can't claim that your voice has been drowned. You understand? So,
is there a victimization of the Christian faith in Nigeria?
That is perhaps a very difficult question to answer. And then it's on state-by-state basis. There are absolute states, like I've mentioned, where as a Christian you don't have any problem. But certainly, from what we know, from the feelers we get, there are areas, pockets of problems in certain parts of the north that we need to work on. But I believe that it will demand Christians and Muslims who understand working together to be able to take care of these concerns.
We need to go for another break, but we'll be getting into a very much crucial conversation after this break. Join us again. Inference, you are saying the likes of Atiku Abubakar should forget running for president in 2027.
Well, I guess I haven't said that. If he wants to run, he can run, in the sense that we don't have any law he will be breaking. But as far as I'm concerned, and then for the overwhelming majority of those who gathered, they believe that the South should be allowed to complete their 8 years. And then we can begin to talk about power moving to the north.
So it can be a Peter Obi, it can be a Rotimi Amechi, but definitely not from the north.
He has
not the
what
candidate
it
from the
takes,
north.
so he has a program that is better than what President Tinubu is doing. Is welcome. We will actually begin the pushback. We've noticed that the engagement of the opposition right now, I didn't want to talk about that, is filled with vitriol, with bluster, with gripes. That to me is even the threat to our democracy more than this threat of having a one-party system that they are talking about. So, but we have not started the pushback. Even some of the issues you raised relating to the promises President Tinubu made, how he has delivered them, whether Nigeria right now is better than when he took over, we will bring the receipts at the appropriate time. So just keep it there with us when campaigns actually begin. And when we begin the pushback, you will hear what we know.
Are you worried? I mean, you've been in politics for several years. The movement that we're seeing in the ADC,
yes,
the likes of Peter Obi, how can your party possibly survive what is to come? A tsunami, some people will call it. They say it's Nigerians against Bola Tinubu and the APC, and that those who are dissatisfied about the current state of our nation under this APC government, saying there's no way in the world, if free and fair elections were conducted, can your party, the APC, win an election? Are you worried about that?
So exactly now you have spoken about the vitriol, the bluster, and that I was talking about. It relates to all those kind of claims. That's the kind of talk I hear. But you see, the truth is that all our conversation, what should be at the center of our conversation, should be the Nigerian people.
And government
I haven't had the discussion centering, you understand, on the Nigerian people. All I hear is anger about one or two things. But the truth is that what is it that they have developed? What vision? What is the idea that they are rallying behind? I'm yet to see that. And until they are able to now bring alternatives to what the president is doing, and we look at it critically that yes, they are better than what we have, they will begin to take them serious.
We're totally out of time,
in the
actually,
absence
Speaker.
of that,
but
everybody knows that it's just gimmicks, it's
if
just
you look
normal
at it,
game,
in terms of
it will
numbers,
take them nowhere.
The political mathematics show that your party is at a disadvantage right now. If you put the mathematics and the figures together, those who are in the ADC, Atiku plus Peter Obi, will give you about 13 million votes as against the 8 million votes that the President Bola Tinubu got in 2023. It means that if there is an election based on those figures, your party is in a losing position.
Well, you are assuming that we will go back, 6 will bring them.
All right.
Trust me.
Honorable Yakubu Dogara, thank you so much. Former Speaker of the House of Representatives, it's a pleasure having you on the program tonight.
Thank you very much, Sharon.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, that's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Akimalwe. God bless Nigeria.